Here at the Pink Grape, I interview winemakers from all over the world. Our purpose is to have fun, be entertained, discover new wines, and meet great people. I hope you will join our journey around the wine world by subscribing to my channel. If you like this video, please be sure to hit that like button, share it with a friend, and please enjoy the interview. Louis, welcome to the show, The Pink Grape. It's a pleasure having you on.
My pleasure being with you, Anthony.
Thank you. And so you're actually a winemaker from South Africa. You're currently in South Africa, so that's pretty sweet. And I saw actually that you used to be a marine biologist. So I wanted to dive in and find out, how did you become a winemaker?
I wanted to go study marine biology. I never went into the field as a practicing marine biologist. I worked with a marine biologist in Port Elizabeth in 2005. If I remember correctly. And I always loved the ocean, and I loved the idea of discovering new species and going diving, and yeah, a big love for the ocean. And so I thought, let's get some experience in the field and work with an experienced marine biologist in South Africa. And I worked on an abalone farm, and I quickly saw that scrubbing shells is not going to be what I wanted to do. And apparently in South Africa, there's not a big scope or field for discovering. There's a lot of input, a lot of money that needs to be funded by universities, and the universities in South Africa that does marine biology, they don't have that big influence, like for instance Oxford or Berkeley, or what some of the other universities overseas does. So I went into my second love, and that was wine. So yeah, that's how I left the marine biology. I still go diving a lot, yeah, but I decided to go into a different field.
While we're on that topic, I visited South Africa. Actually, I went there for 5 weeks, and I filmed a documentary on the wines of South Africa. And actually, by the time this interview gets released, people will be able to go to the website, thepinkgrape.com, and check it out. But yeah, one of the stories I covered when I was there was a winery called Hidden Valley Vineyards. And yeah, they actually took a barrel of wine and sunk it into the ocean. Did you hear about that wine?
I heard about it. I know there was a different guy, his name is Cobus du Plessis. He had a cellar not far from us here in Hibbertsdale called Virgin Earth Wines. And I think where the original idea came from was when he had a hidden barrel, Shiraz, that he released sometime in 2007, 2009. And he had some barrels sunk into his irrigation dam. So he tied them down with nets, had them sunk down, and left them there for a year. And then they fished them out again. And the Shiraz did really well. I think it won like 5 stars at John Plateau Awards in South Africa. And there was this one lost barrel that they couldn't find. So for instance, they put in 10 and they only found 9. So the one was lost. And only years later, they discovered that this barrel was fished out by some of the farm workers. They got a hold of the barrel and tried to get it out, and had a really good weekend. So
I love that. That's great. Well, that's awesome. So, being in the wine industry, what would you say is your favorite part about being a winemaker?
I think there's too much to mention. For me, being a winemaker is I love harvest. It's probably one of the most exhilarating times of the year. Everything is complete chaos. You don't know where to touch or where to leave. But in a sense, it's yeah, how can I say it? It's synchronized chaos, where everything falls into place and the wines at the end come out. And it's always lovely to taste through the wines after the vintage. And then when you find a really specific wine that really did well that vintage, every vintage is different. Of course, we have consistency in vintages and the varietals, but you find that really one hidden gem, and that gives you goosebumps. So yeah, I think for me, that's probably the most special part of being a winemaker. But yeah, there's a lot of aspects to it around the marketing and tastings and communicating with people and friends and drinking and discussing wines over a fire. is also one of my big favorites. So yeah, wine is an international topic, so there's a lot of talk about over a glass of wine. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point. I love the harvest season as well. It's just full of life, full of energy. And yeah, it's a great time. So, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your wines? Tell us about the winery you work at, and tell us about your wine.
Okay, so I moved to Jakkalsvlei. Jakkalsvlei is a small private cellar on the south coast of South Africa. It's one of those regions that's not really well known for producing grapes in South Africa. If you look at on a map, you'll find that Cape Town is to the southern part of South Africa, where the Cape Winelands are mostly dominated, and then we are more to the eastern side. So just past Hermanus, which is also a really well-known wine area for South Africa. So we're more to Mossel Bay side, and although it's not a really well-known area for producing wine, the Jonker family, for who I work, they've been 3 generations producing wine in this region. So it's not a new thing for them, but it is certainly a little bit unique in the sense of the South African winelands. So yeah, I've been with them for 3 years. I came from the Southern Cape, which is the area just over the mountain. I worked in the cellar at Calitzdorp, which is the Klein Karoo, which is more continental climate, where we here is more a Mediterranean climate almost. And so the interesting part of this area is because it's so different from all the other areas in South Africa. We've got really unique soils and temperatures. We've got a much more temperate climate, more consistency in the climate, so which can be a good thing and a bad thing. We don't have that cold, really cold winter months, which you need for viticulture, and then we don't have really high heat in summer. So we always around about 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, where you get in the other regions, you can easily go to 40 degrees Celsius. So we don't have those big peaks, and that also makes it interesting for the wine producing in this area. Yeah. So we're a small cellar. The cellar Jakkalsvlei only started producing wines in 2008, which is not a long time ago. And in 10 years' time, we've grown a brand which is in South Africa. A lot of people are looking up to because of the quick amount of time that we've been able to grow this brand to a market that is struggling at the moment because of economical sense, but also with volumes, we're producing volumes on a higher price point, not giving it away.
Perfect. And so, like, one thing I get asked quite a bit is from people is, when you walk into a wine store, it's like, how do I know which wine to pick? Right? You walk in, there's 1,000 bottles on the shelf, and people are like, well, how do I know what to pick? So for people that are going to watch and listen to this, when they walk into a wine store, if they can't find your wine on the shelf, but why should they walk in and pick a bottle of wine from South Africa? So what would be different about a South African wine than going in and picking a bottle of wine from, say, France, Italy, California, and so on? What's unique about South African wine?
I think South African wine is, if you take it back a couple of years, the South African wine industry falls under the New World wines. I think it's a New World wine industry that has a lot of fundamentals in the Old World techniques and roots in the older countries, because we had the French that started and the Netherlands that started the wine in South Africa. A lot of the French Huguenots that came into South Africa that brought those techniques with them to South Africa and the plantings. So we mostly dominated in varietal by the South African varietals are mostly dominated by the French varietals that we have. We only have one indigenous variety, which is called Pinotage. I think in a sense, Pinotage is probably one of those wines that if you find it on the shelf, it's very unique, it's different, it's pure to South Africa. And then another varietal that from the Loire Valley in France that South Africa almost adopted is Chenin Blanc. And I think South Africa makes probably one of, or most of the best of your Chenin Blancs in the world at the moment. And there's a lot of new influence from younger winemakers and guys that goes abroad, goes overseas to pick up those techniques, and that brings it back to South Africa and implement it on the wines. A lot of wines that's aged in Cuevries goes the big barrels, and so it's not those overpowering wines with a lot of oak. It's much more subtle, but you do have a lot of flavor and a lot of density and depth in the wines, but it's still toned down. And yeah, it is a hotter climate. We do in South Africa have a hotter climate, so we probably be able to be compared to Australian wines in a sense of heat. But again, with that influence from outside, we've toned down to make it much more elegant wines, almost like the French does. So in a nutshell, for what makes South African wines unique, I think the people here makes them unique. The stories that we tell in our wines are unique. And when you visit South Africa to taste the wines and come on a wine tour, you'll quickly find out that there's a big difference between South African wines and other wines in the world.
Yeah, and one of the things that's great about wine for me too is that it represents place, right? And so you can't duplicate the location and the beauty of South Africa. I've been there myself, and it is, it's just beautiful. So I mean, you get a piece of that when you buy and consume a bottle of South African wine.
Yeah, you can taste the sunshine in a bottle.
Perfect. Well, Louis, I appreciate you doing this. It's been fascinating learning about you and your wines. I like to end my interviews with a question, and that is, what is your favorite thing about wine?
Oh, I think, like I said, it's probably that camaraderie that comes with wine, sitting down at the table over a lunch, drinking wine and discussing that wine. That's probably one of my favorite things. I've got a lot of winemaker friends and guys that own vineyards, so it's always a full-hearted, sometimes a little hot under the collar discussion about what areas are the best and what wines are the best. But it makes it interesting and it makes it fun, and I think that's probably my favorite thing about wine and being a winemaker and enjoying wine. And it's always new, and always they can discover new things and varietals, and it's never the same. Each bottle is different. It's not a cool drink that you buy in a can. Once you pull the cork of a nice Shiraz or a Cabernet Sauvignon that you've put away for 5 or 6 or 10 years or 20 years, and there's that anticipation to pull that cork and find something that's really unique and beautiful, and enjoy it with friends. I think that's probably the best part of wine, is to be able to enjoy it with friends.
Hey, I love it. Yeah, I'm with you. So, well, for everybody watching this, I'm going to put the link to your website down in the description below, so they can check you out, visit you, try and buy some of your wine. So we'll be sending some people your way. But thanks again, Louis, for being on the show.
Anthony, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and it was a good discussion. I liked it.
Thank you. We'll talk again soon.
Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed this week's interview with a winemaker. Be sure to tune in next week, as I'll be interviewing another winemaker. I hope you will join our journey around the wine world by subscribing to this channel. Be sure to like this video and share it with a friend. We'll see you next week. Thank you.